That night, I counted exactly 7 bruises on my arm, one for each time my stepfather screamed, "You owe this family." I was 31 years old, didn't owe anyone a damn thing, just had my grandmother's inheritance sitting in an account with my name on it. By morning, the church, the neighbors, my coworkers all knew I was losing my mind. They didn't know about the recordings, the documentation, and the restraining order already in motion. I wasn't running anymore. I was setting the stage for one final counterstrike. My name is Nora Whitaker, and at 4:15 a.m., I sat in my kitchen pressing a bag of frozen peas against my forearm while my phone buzzed with another text from Roy. Transfer the $85,000 by Friday. That money belongs to the family. The fluorescent light above my sink flickered, casting harsh shadows across the purple-green bruises blooming on my skin. Each mark had its own story from last night, the grip when I tried to leave, the shove against the wall, the twist when I reached for my phone. The apartment still smelled like the motor oil that clung to Roy's coveralls, that acrid stench that followed him everywhere from his failing garage. I'd driven here straight from my mother's house in Cedar Ridge, 32 miles of dark highway with my hands shaking on the wheel. The inheritance from my grandfather had cleared into my account exactly 1 week ago, $100,000, designated solely to me in his will. He'd been specific about that. For Nora Marie Whitaker only, to secure her independence. Even in death. Grandpa knew what kind of man my mother had married. Roy Halpern had been circling this money like a vulture since the reading of the will. First came the suggestions, family investments, he called them. Then the guilt trips about how much he'd done for me, raising me since I was 12. Last night, the mask finally slipped completely. "You ungrateful bitch," he'd said when I refused to sign over the funds to save his garage from bankruptcy. Mom sat in her recliner, eyes fixed on the television, pretending not to hear. Chase, my half-brother, had simply walked out to the back porch when Roy's voice started rising. The bruises were already photographed, each image time-stamped and backed up to 3 different cloud services. My engineering brain had kicked in even through the shock document everything. Create redundancies, establish timelines. At Pioneer Ridge Engineering, we called it failure analysis. Figure out what broke and why, then prevent it from happening again. My phone lit up with a voice message from my mother. "Sweetie, I just want our family to have peace. Your stepfather worked so hard for all of us. Can't you just help him this once?" This once. As if Roy hadn't already drained her retirement account, mortgaged the house twice, and maxed out credit cards in her name. As if I hadn't paid their utility bills for the past 3 years just to keep the lights on. Another text from Chase. "You're destroying this family." The local Facebook page for Cedar Ridge Community had 3 new posts about me since midnight. Anonymous accounts spreading rumors about my instability, my drinking problem, a badly photoshopped image of me at last year's company picnic with a bottle crudely edited into my hand. Roy's network was already at work, laying the groundwork for whatever story he planned to tell. I pulled up my laptop and started a new document, Timeline of Events, January 15th, 2025. Every text would be screenshot, every call recorded where legally permissible, every bruise documented with medical records. Roy Halpern thought he could beat me into submission, then gaslight an entire town into believing I was crazy. He had no idea what a structural engineer did for a living. We found weak points, we tested them to failure, and we built things that could withstand any storm. The pattern had been there for years, hidden in plain sight like cracks in a foundation before the collapse. Roy kept a spare key to my apartment for emergencies. Though emergencies seemed to include rifling through my mail and leaving passive-aggressive notes about my spending, I'd come home once to find him sitting at my kitchen table, going through my bank statements with a highlighter. "Just making sure you're being responsible," he'd said, as if I hadn't graduated summa cum laude with an engineering degree, as if I wasn't managing multi-million-dollar infrastructure projects at 31. My phone rang Roy again, then Elaine, then Chase. A coordinated assault at 6:45 a.m. I let them all go to voicemail while I scrolled through the Facebook posts multiplying like a virus. Concerned about Nora W. Has anyone else noticed her erratic behavior lately? Saw her stumbling out of Murphy's last Tuesday? Sad what addiction does to families. I'd been at Murphy's exactly once in the past month for my colleague Derek's retirement dinner. Stone sober? Home by 9:30 p.m. But truth didn't matter in Roy's campaigns. Only the narrative. My mother's voice message played through the speaker. Honey, I'm worried about you. Maybe you should talk to someone. Father Mitchell has a wonderful counseling program at church. Father Mitchell, who golfed with Roy every Saturday, who'd blessed Roy's garage renovation with parish funds, who'd been fed whatever story Roy was spinning. The memories came in fragments, each one another piece of evidence I'd ignored for too long. My college graduation they'd arrived 2 hours late, missing my valedictorian speech, but Roy had time to ask about job signing bonuses at dinner. My promotion to senior engineer announced at Sunday dinner, immediately followed by Roy's request for a small loan of $10,000, the award I'd won for the Morrison Bridge project they hadn't attended the ceremony. But the next day, Roy suggested I share my success with family. Chase texted again. Sister, you're acting crazy. Just give him the money. It's not worth destroying Mom over. Destroying Mom. As if I was the one who'd isolated her from her friends, monitored her phone calls, convinced her that her memory was failing when she questioned missing money. The Cedar Ridge Community Watch page had a new post from Dolores Hampton, Roy's customer for 20 years. Some children don't appreciate everything their parents sacrifice for them. Praying for the Halpern family during this difficult time. My laptop dinged with an email from HR at Pioneer Ridge. Someone had called claiming to be a concerned friend reporting my substance abuse issues. They wanted to schedule a meeting. I pulled up my banking app. 3 failed login attempts overnight, not from my devices. Roy getting desperate. Probably. The inheritance sat safely in a separate account at a different bank, one he didn't know about, with security questions he couldn't answer. Another memory surfaced. Last Thanksgiving, Roy cornering me in the garage. Your grandmother always wanted to take care of the whole family. She'd be disappointed to see you hoarding her money. The way he'd stood between me and the door, his bulk blocking the exit, reeking of beer and entitlement. My wrist still ached from where he'd grabbed it last night, purple fingerprints blooming like toxic flowers. You owe this family, he'd said 7 times, his grip tightening with each repetition. But I'd been recording on my phone by then, his voice clear and undeniable. Give me the fucking money or I'll make sure everyone knows what you really are. What I really was the meal ticket he couldn't cash. Elaine sent another voice message. Your stepfather just wants what's best for everyone. You used to be such a sweet girl. I don't know what's changed you. What changed was that Grandpa's inheritance gave me options. For the first time in 19 years, I could say no without worrying about Mom being evicted or the power being shut off. Roy knew it. That's why the mask had finally slipped, revealing the manipulator who'd been feeding off our family like a parasite. The posts kept multiplying. The calls kept coming. The bruises kept darkening. But for the first time since I was 12 years old, I wasn't afraid. I was done being the good daughter, the responsible one, the family ATM. I was done being their victim. At 7:30 a.m., Lena Ortiz found me in the office break room, photographing my bruises against the white wall for better contrast. She didn't say anything at first, just closed the door behind her and pulled out her phone. Medical documentation, she asked. All business. As project supervisor, Lena had seen enough workplace accidents to know evidence protocols. Already scheduled for noon, I replied. Cedar Ridge Medical Center. They'll photograph, measure, and create an official record. Lena nodded, then pulled up a contact. Monroe Hale, best family law attorney in the county. He handled my sister's domestic case. He doesn't play games. By 10 a.m., I sat in Monroe Hale's office, a converted Victorian on Main Street. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with the kind of focused intensity I recognized from engineering consultants who specialized in failure analysis. Colorado is a one-party consent state, he said, reviewing my phone recordings. These are admissible. The threatening texts, the voicemails, the bruises we can file for an emergency protection order today. What about the social media posts, the calls to my employer? Defamation, potentially cyber harassment? Document everything. Screenshot with timestamps. Archive the URLs. He slid a business card across the desk. Detective Sarah Klein, Cedar Ridge PD. She specializes in domestic cases. No tolerance for bullshit. At the medical center, Dr. Patel carefully cataloged each bruise, measuring dimensions, noting coloration patterns that indicated timing and force. Defensive wounds, she said quietly, pointing to the marks on my forearms, consistent with trying to protect yourself from an aggressor. The nurse took photographs from multiple angles while I held a ruler for scale. Everything went into my official medical record, date and time stamped, witnessed and signed. Detective Klein met me in the hospital parking lot at 2:15 p.m. She was older, maybe 50, with gray streaks in her black hair and eyes that had seen too much. I know Roy Halpern, she said bluntly. Stow had complaints before, but they always got withdrawn. You planning to withdraw? No. Good. Keep those recordings safe. Make copies. Store them in multiple locations. She handed me a case number. This creates an official paper trail, even if the prosecutor doesn't file charges immediately. It's on record. Back at my apartment, I created an evidence matrix on my laptop, physical evidence medical records, photographs with timestamps, clothing with Roy's DNA from the struggle, digital evidence, 43 threatening texts, 16 voicemails, screenshot archives of 28 social media posts, financial evidence inheritance documents, Roy's attempted unauthorized access to accounts, paper trail of his debts, witnesses. Eventually, someone at that intervention would crack. Someone saw something. Engineers understood that every system had a failure point. Lena texted at 4 p.m. HR shut down that complaint. Told them you're our best engineer with 0 disciplinary actions in 8 years. They're now investigating who made the false report. Monroe called at 5. Protection order paperwork is ready. We file first thing tomorrow. Also, I've sent a cease and desist to Roy regarding the social media posts. He continues. We add it to the harassment charges. I spent the evening backing up everything to 3 cloud services, 2 external drives, and Monroe's secure server. Each piece of evidence cataloged with date, time, context, my engineering training taking over redundancy, verification, documentation. The Facebook posts had reached 57 by 6 p.m. But something interesting was happening. A few people were pushing back. This seems like a coordinated attack. What's really going on? I work with Nora. This is complete BS. Why are all these posts from accounts created this week? Roy had overplayed his hand. The pattern was too obvious, too aggressive. People were starting to notice. My phone rang unknown number. I let it record to voicemail. Miss Whitaker, this is Tom Morrison from Morrison Construction. Roy Halpern owes us $87,000. He promised us you'd cover it from some inheritance. Just wanted to confirm before we proceed with collections. Another piece of evidence. Roy was already spending money he didn't have, making promises with funds that weren't his. I forwarded the voicemail to Monroe with a note, add fraud to the list. His response was immediate. Already drafting, this gets better by the hour. At 8:45 p.m., I sat in my locked apartment. Evidence spread across my dining table like battle plans. 7 bruises had started this, but Roy had no idea what he'd really started. Tomorrow, we'd file the protection order. Tomorrow, the legal machinery would begin turning. Tonight, I was building my case the way I'd build a bridge, one precisely calculated piece at a time. The intervention was scheduled for 7 p.m. on Thursday. My mother called 6 times that afternoon, each message more desperate than the last. Please come, honey. Father Mitchell will be here. Mrs. Hampton. The Johnsons. People who care about you. People who bought their cars at Roy's garage. People who owed him favors. People he'd been feeding lies to for days. I arrived at 6:55 p.m., my phone already recording in my jacket pocket, a second backup device in my purse. Monroe had coached me. Don't engage, document. If you feel threatened, leave immediately and call 911. The living room was staged like a tribunal. Roy in his recliner, playing the concerned father. Mom perched beside him, hands twisted in her lap. Father Mitchell on the couch with his Bible, Mrs. Hampton clutching tissues she didn't need, the Johnsons looking uncomfortable but present, Chase lurking by the kitchen doorway, and on the coffee table a printed stack of papers. Nora's journal, Roy announced as I walked in. We found it in her old room. Proof of her struggles. I almost laughed. I hadn't lived in that house for 9 years. Any journal would have to be ancient or fabricated. Let me see that, I said, reaching for the papers. Roy blocked my hand. You need help, Nora. We all see it. The drinking, the paranoia, the hoarding of family money. That's not a journal, I said clearly, for the recording. I haven't kept a journal since high school. Denial is part of the disease, Father Mitchell interjected, his voice oozing false concern. Mrs. Hampton started crying on cue. We just want the old Nora back. I pulled out my phone, making sure everyone could see it. I'm recording this conversation for my protection. Roy lunged up from his chair. You're not recording anything in my house. He grabbed for my phone. I pulled back. He grabbed my wrist, the same one he'd bruised before, and twisted. My phone clattered to the floor. Stop! I shouted. You're hurting me. Roy, calm down, Father Mitchell said weakly. But Roy was beyond calm. He pushed me toward the door, his hand on my shoulder, fingers digging in. Get out. Get out until you can be reasonable. I want my phone, I said loudly. You want to destroy this family with your lies, he snarled, shoving me again. This time, Chase stepped forward. Dad, that's enough. You defending her after everything I've done for this family. The room erupted. Mrs. Hampton gasping, the Johnsons standing up, Mom finally speaking. Roy, please. I grabbed my phone from the floor and headed for the door, but Roy blocked it, his bulk filling the frame. You're not leaving until you agree to help this family. I'm leaving now, I said clearly, or I'm calling the police. You're crazy. Everyone here sees it. Who's going to believe you? I held up my phone. The recording will. His face went purple. He reached for my phone again, and this time his shove sent me into the wall. The Johnson's gasp was audible. I dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? I'm at 427 Maple Street in Cedar Ridge. My stepfather is preventing me from leaving and has physically assaulted me. There are witnesses present. Roy stepped back, his face shifting from rage to calculation. She's having a mental health crisis, he told the room. You all saw it. But the Johnsons were already moving toward the door. We should go, Mr. Johnson said quietly. Mrs. Hampton looked confused, the script disrupted. The police arrived in 12 minutes. 2 officers, one of them Detective Klein's partner, Officer Martinez, who recognized me from filing the report. Miss Whitaker, are you injured? New bruises on top of old ones, I said. Same wrist he grabbed on Monday. She's lying, Roy started, but Officer Martinez held up a hand. Sir, we'll take everyone's statement. The journal had mysteriously disappeared from the coffee table, but the Johnsons, when questioned separately, admitted they'd seen Roy grab me, push me, prevent me from leaving. Father Mitchell claimed he didn't see clearly. Mrs. Hampton was confused about what happened, but Chase surprised me. He shoved her, my half-brother told Officer Martinez. She tried to leave and he wouldn't let her. And that journal thing, I've never seen it before tonight. Mom sobbed in the corner, repeating, this isn't happening, like a mantra. By 9:30 p.m., I sat in the police station filing an amended report. Officer Martinez had photographed new bruises forming on my shoulder and wrist. Roy's intervention had become evidence of continued harassment and assault. Monroe met me at the station with the emergency protection order paperwork. "This accelerates everything," he said. "Multiple witnesses, even hostile ones, saw him assault you. The 911 call establishes the timeline. We file for the emergency order tonight." By 11:45 p.m., a judge had signed the temporary restraining order. Roy Halpern was legally required to stay 500 feet away from me, my home, and my workplace. The intervention meant to break me had broken his facade instead. Lena found the first thread by accident. She'd been researching property records for a completely different project when Roy's name popped up in a tax lien database. "Your stepfather owes $43,000 in back taxes on the garage," she said, sliding her laptop across my desk at lunch. "But look at this. He's been filing extensions claiming pending family investment." I pulled up the garage's business filing on the Secretary of State website. 3 creditors had filed liens, 2 lawsuits pending for unpaid services. The business account had been flagged for suspicious activity. "Can you dig deeper?" I asked. "Already am." Lena's fingers flew across her keyboard. Credit report services, public records, court databases. The man's financial life is a disaster zone. By 3 p.m., we'd assembled a financial autopsy. Roy owed $87,000 to Morrison Construction, $32,000 to Premier Auto Parts, $18,000 in personal credit cards, all maxed out in the last 6 months. The garage was hemorrhaging $3,000 a month. But the real discovery came when I checked my own credit report. "That son of a bitch," I breathed. 3 credit inquiries in my name from the past week, 2 attempted credit card applications, 1 personal loan application for $50,000 submitted the day after Grandpa's will was read. "He needs your signature for those," Lena said. "But he's testing the system, seeing what he can get away with." I forwarded everything to Monroe, then called Detective Klein. "Credit fraud is a federal crime," she said. "This goes beyond domestic violence. You need to file reports with the credit bureaus immediately, freeze your credit, and document every unauthorized attempt." That evening, I found more. Roy had listed me as a guarantor on an equipment lease from 2 years ago, forged signature. He'd used my address for business correspondence, establishing a paper trail that made it look like I was involved in the garage's operations. My phone buzzed. Unknown number, but I recognized the area code Roy's creditor from Denver. "Miss Whitaker, this is Alan Briggs from Mountain Financial. Your father assured us you'd be handling the garage's outstanding debt from your recent inheritance." "I'm not responsible for Roy Halpern's debts," I said carefully, recording the call. "And he's my stepfather, not my father. Has he provided any documentation showing I'm a guarantor?" A pause. "He said you were a silent partner in the business." "I'm not. Any documents claiming otherwise are fraudulent." "I'll be filing a police report about identity theft. Would you like the case number?" Briggs's tone changed immediately. "I think we need to review our records. Thank you for clarifying, Miss Whitaker." The emails started flooding in that night. Roy had apparently given my contact information to every creditor, every collection agency, every person he owed money to. Each one had been told the same story, that I'd inherited money meant for the family business. I responded to each one with the same template Monroe had provided. "I am not responsible for Roy Halpern's debts. Any claims otherwise are fraudulent. Please direct all future correspondence to my attorney, Monroe Hale." Then I found the smoking gun, buried in my old email account from college, one I rarely checked, was a message from Roy sent 3 weeks ago before the will reading, before he knew the exact amount, but after Grandpa had died. "Nora, when the inheritance comes through, I'll need you to transfer it to the family account. I've already made commitments based on that money. Don't make this difficult. Your grandfather would want the family business saved. He'd been planning this before he even knew how much money existed. He'd been spending it in his mind, promising it to creditors, building his house of cards on funds that were never his." Lena helped me create a timeline visualization: every debt, every fraudulent attempt, every creditor contact. The pattern was clear. Roy had accelerated his spending after Grandpa's diagnosis 6 months ago, gambling on an inheritance he assumed he could control through my mother or manipulation. "This is premeditated financial abuse," Monroe said when I presented everything at his office the next morning. "He's been setting this up for months, possibly years, with some of these forged documents. The assault was just the last resort when manipulation failed." Detective Klein was even more direct. "He's been using you as a piggy bank he couldn't quite crack open. Now he's desperate and sloppy. These fraud attempts, the paper trail he's handed us a case." By end of business Friday, we'd filed 17 fraud reports, frozen my credit with all 3 bureaus, and documented over $200,000 in debts Roy had tried to connect to my name. The protection order was just the beginning. Roy Halpern had built his life on financial manipulation and lies, using my mother's credit, my reputation, and now my inheritance as collateral for his failing empire. But engineers don't just find failures. We document them, analyze them, and make sure they can never happen again. The foundation of Roy's house of cards was crumbling, and I had the receipts for every crack. The Cedar Ridge Community Gala was Pioneer Ridge Engineering's crown jewel and annual fundraiser for the new pedestrian bridge project. 300 guests, local media coverage, and a silent auction that raised 6 figures for infrastructure improvement. Roy would never miss an opportunity to network with potential customers and creditors in the same room. Monroe thought I was crazy when I proposed using it as bait. "You want to deliberately put yourself in the same room as him? The restraining order says 500 feet. The venue is 8,000 square feet. And I'll have security, witnesses, and media present." He leaned back, considering. "What's the real play? Roy needs to maintain his image as the wronged stepfather. He'll show up to defend his reputation, work the room, tell his version. But when he sees me succeeding, celebrating, unaffected, he'll crack." Monroe smiled slowly. "And we'll be ready." The preparation was meticulous. I hired a discreet personal security officer, retired police, recommended by Detective Klein. Monroe arranged for an independent process server to attend as a guest, ready to witness and document any violations. Detective Klein herself would be there off-duty, her presence unofficial but strategic. I wore a wire. Legal in Colorado. Monroe confirmed, and the recording quality was crystal clear. The device was smaller than a button, invisible under the deep blue cocktail dress I'd chosen specifically because it photographed well. If this went sideways, I wanted clear media footage. At 7:30 p.m., the ballroom of the Cedar Ridge Grand Hotel glittered with local elite. I stood near the presentation boards showing our bridge designs, surrounded by colleagues who'd closed ranks around me after the HR incident. At 7:52 p.m., Roy walked in. He'd dressed for impact, his one good suit, fresh haircut, my mother on his arm looking fragile in a dress I'd never seen before. They worked the room's opposite side, Roy's voice carrying as he held court with the Rotary Club members. "Family troubles," I heard him saying. "You know how inheritance can tear people apart. We're just hoping Nora gets the help she needs." I felt the security officer shift beside me, ready. Monroe was by the bar, watching. The process server circulated with a champagne glass full of water. At 8:20 p.m., I took the stage for my presentation about the bridge project. 300 people watching as I explained load calculations, safety factors, community impact. Roy stood in the back, his face darkening as the mayor praised my work, as the crowd applauded, as it became clear I was anything but the unstable woman he'd described. After the presentation, I stood by the display with printed copies of Grandpa's will, specifically the anti-assignment clause Monroe had highlighted. The clause that made any coerced transfer null and void, that specifically protected the inheritance from family pressure. Roy approached at 8:47 p.m., stopping just outside the legal distance. But microphones don't care about restraining orders. "Enjoying your blood money," he said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. I turned on my phone's video, holding it openly. "The inheritance Grandpa left me. Yes, I'm grateful for his gift. Gift. Roy's voice rose. That money was meant for the family. Your mother needs it. The business needs it. The business that's $200,000 in debt, I said clearly. The one you've been fraudulently using my name to prop up. People were staring now. The mayor's wife stepped back. The bank president turned to watch. You lying bitch, Roy snarled, stepping closer. 490 feet now. I have the documentation, I continued, pulling out a folder. Credit applications in my name. Forged signatures. You telling creditors I'd cover your debts? I should have beaten sense into you harder, he said. The room went silent. Someone gasped. Could you repeat that? I asked. You're saying you beat me? You needed discipline, someone to teach you respect. If I have to sign those papers myself, I will. 450 feet. The security officer moved forward slightly. My mother finally spoke, her voice cracking. Roy, stop. You said we'd just talked to her. Shut up. Elaine. You told everyone she was unstable like I asked, didn't you? The process server was recording video now. Detective Klein had moved closer. The local news photographer was shooting continuously. Mr. Halpern, I said formally, you're in violation of the restraining order. You've admitted to assault, you've admitted to fraud, and you've threatened me again in front of witnesses. Roy lunged forward, arm raised. 400 feet. 300. 200. The security officer intercepted him, along with 2 hotel security guards who'd been alerted. Roy swung wildly, catching one guard in the shoulder, screaming about his money, his rights, his ungrateful stepdaughter who owed him everything. Detective Klein identified herself. Badge out. Roy Halpern, you're under arrest for violation of a protection order, assault, and attempted assault. As they cuffed him, Roy looked straight at the news camera. That money is mine. I raised her. I saved that family. She owes me. The photographer caught it all, the rage, the entitlement, the complete breakdown of his carefully crafted image. By 9:30 p.m., the footage was already uploaded to the Cedar Ridge Gazette's website. Monroe appeared at my elbow as police led Roy away. That was either brilliant or insane. Engineers calculate risk, I said, watching my mother sob in a chair, surrounded by women who'd believed Roy's lies just hours before. I knew he couldn't resist the stage. The process server handed Monroe his phone, showing the full recording. Got everything. The admission of assault, the fraud confession, the threats. Send it to my office immediately, Monroe said. We file additional charges Monday morning. Chase found me by the coat check at 10 p.m. You planned this whole thing. I planned for contingencies, I corrected. Roy chose his actions. He's finished, Chase said quietly. The garage, his reputation, everything. Yes. Chase studied me for a moment. Good. I hadn't expected that. He's been bleeding Mom dry for years. My half-brother continued. I was just too scared to say anything. When this is over, maybe we can actually help her. The Cedar Ridge Community Facebook page was already exploding. Video clips, photos, witness accounts. Roy's carefully constructed narrative collapsing in real time. But the best part came in a text from Lena at 11:15 p.m. Check the news website. They're using your bridge presentation right next to Roy's arrest. Local engineer stands strong against domestic abuse. You won. Not yet, but the foundation was set. The evidence was overwhelming, and Roy Halpern had destroyed himself in front of Cedar Ridge's entire power structure. The gala had been a complete success, just not the kind Roy expected. The courthouse at 9 a.m. Monday morning was a convergence of every thread I'd pulled. Criminal court for the protection order violations and assault. Civil court for the defamation suit. Financial crimes division for the fraud investigation. Monroe had orchestrated a legal symphony, and every instrument was about to play at once. Roy sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, his public defender looking overwhelmed by the stack of evidence Monroe had provided. My mother wasn't there. Chase had driven her to stay with her sister in Denver, away from the cameras and the shame. Case number 7839, People versus Halpern. The judge announced, "Let's address the criminal matters first." The prosecutor, Janet Valdez, stood with military precision. "Your Honor, we have video evidence of Mr. Halpern violating a protection order, assaulting a security officer, and confessing to previous assault. Additionally, we have recordings of threats, witness testimony from the January 15th intervention, and medical documentation of injuries." She played the gala footage on the courtroom screen. Roy's voice echoed through the speakers. "I should have beaten sense into you harder." His public defender tried damage control. "Your Honor, my client was provoked." Ms. Whitaker deliberately appeared at a public event she was hosting for her employer. The judge interrupted. "Mr. Halpern was served with a restraining order. He chose to attend and approach her." The first verdict came swift: guilty of violating the protection order, guilty of assault on the security guard, guilty of criminal harassment. The protection order was made permanent lifetime. No contact, no third-party contact, 800 feet minimum distance. We moved to civil court at 11 a.m. Monroe presented the defamation case like an engineer presenting load calculations: methodical, precise, devastating. 57 fabricated social media posts, the fake journal, the calls to my employer, financial damages from lost reputation, and the HR investigation. "Your Honor," Monroe said, "we have here a coordinated campaign to destroy Ms. Whitaker's reputation solely to coerce money from her. The defendant enlisted others, created false evidence, and caused measurable professional harm." Roy's new civil attorney, paid for by mortgaging what was left of the garage, tried to argue opinion versus fact. The judge wasn't buying it. Mr. Halpern claimed Ms. Whitaker had a drinking problem. "Do you have any evidence of this?" "Well, no specific." He claimed she was mentally unstable. "Medical records?" "Not exactly." Then these weren't opinions. They were lies designed to harm. The civil judgment: $65,000 in compensatory damages, $30,000 in punitive damages. A public retraction to be published in the Cedar Ridge Gazette and posted on the community Facebook page. But the afternoon session was where everything culminated. The financial crimes prosecutor had done her homework: credit fraud, identity theft, fraudulent representations to creditors, each charge supported by the paper trail Lena and I had assembled. "Your Honor," she said, "Mr. Halpern systematically used Ms. Whitaker's information to secure credit, made false claims about her involvement in his business, and attempted to coerce a legitimate inheritance through fraud and force." She presented the email Roy had sent before the will reading, the credit applications, the forged documents. Then she played a recording I hadn't heard before Roy on a call with Morrison Construction. "Nora's getting her money soon. She's my daughter. She'll cover this. I guarantee it." The judge's expression hardened. "Mr. Halpern, did Ms. Whitaker ever agree to cover your business debts?" Roy finally spoke, his voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. "She owed us. I raised her." "That's not what I asked." "No." "Did she authorize you to use her information for credit applications?" "No." "Did you forge her signature on financial documents?" His lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. "On advice of counsel, I plead the fifth." The financial crimes verdict: guilty on 3 counts of identity theft, 2 counts of credit fraud, 4 counts of fraudulent representation. Sentencing would come later, but the prosecutor indicated she'd seek the maximum, up to 5 years. The final component came from an unexpected source: the probate court. Monroe had filed a special motion regarding the inheritance, citing the anti-assignment clause and the attempted coercion. The judge reviewed Grandpa's will, particularly the language he'd insisted on including. "This inheritance is protected from any claims, assignments, or transfers made under duress, coercion, or undue influence." She read. Mr. Whitaker clearly anticipated this possibility. "Any attempt to force transfer of these funds is legally void. Ms. Whitaker maintains sole control of her inheritance, and any further attempts to access it will be considered criminal harassment." She looked directly at Roy. "Mr. Halpern, you have no legal claim to this money. You never did. and your attempts to obtain it have cost you everything. By 4:30 p.m., it was over. 3 courts, 3 devastating verdicts. Roy faced years in prison, hundreds of thousands in damages he could never pay, and a lifetime ban from coming near me. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. I'd prepared a single statement. Domestic abuse isn't always visible. Financial abuse, emotional manipulation, and gaslighting leave scars, too. I had resources many victims don't evidence, legal support, and an inheritance that gave me independence. The system worked for me, but it shouldn't take this much proof for victims to be believed. Monroe walked me to my car. Full sweep. You destroyed him completely. He destroyed himself, I corrected. I just documented it. That evening, I sat in my apartment reviewing the court orders, permanent protection, financial restitution, criminal conviction. The garage would be liquidated to pay creditors and damages. Roy would serve at least 18 months, possibly more. My phone buzzed with a text from Chase. Mom's safe in Denver. She's starting to understand what he did to all of us. It's going to take time, but I think she'll be okay. You did the right thing. I looked at the legal documents spread across my table, the paper trail of my freedom, bought with bruises and evidence and the refusal to stay silent. Tomorrow, I'd go back to building bridges. Tonight, I'd already burned the right ones down. The court clerk handed me the sealed envelope at 4:15 p.m. Tuesday afternoon, the final protection order, embossed with the state seal, permanent and irrevocable. 5 pages that meant Roy Halpern could never legally enter my life again. Outside the courthouse, the local reporter who'd covered the gala approached with her microphone. Ms. Whitaker, any comment on the verdict? I looked directly at the camera, thinking of all the victims who'd never get their day in court. The truth is loud enough. She lowered the microphone. Off the record, the whole town knows what he did now. The Facebook group deleted all those posts about you. People are apologizing. They don't need to apologize. They need to learn to question the narrative when someone's being destroyed online. My phone buzzed with an email from Roy's attorney. Settlement offer. Roy would sign away any claim to contact or proximity in exchange for me dropping the financial damages. I forwarded it to Monroe with 2 words, absolutely not. At my apartment, I installed the new smart lock biometric scanner. Backup codes only I knew. Automatic alerts to my phone and security company. The locksmith, a woman named Jamie, nodded approvingly. Saw the news, she said quietly. Good locks are just the start. You've got cameras. Full system, motion sensors, direct line to police. Good. Too many people think it can't happen to them. As she left, I found Chase waiting by my door with a banker's box. Mom wanted you to have these, he said. Photos, your old school stuff, things from before Roy. Inside were pictures I hadn't seen in years. My college graduation where they'd arrived late. My first day at Pioneer Ridge. But underneath older photos, Mom and me before Roy, when Dad was still alive, when she smiled without fear behind her eyes. She's filing for divorce, Chase added. Found out Roy had 3 other credit cards in her name she didn't know about. The lawyer says she might actually keep the house once Roy's debts are cleared from her name. How is she? Angry. Finally angry instead of afraid. He paused. She wants to apologize to you. When you're ready. Not yet. Fair. That evening, Monroe called with final numbers. Roy's garage was being liquidated. The tools, equipment, and property would cover maybe 30% of his debts. The creditors were fighting over scraps. Morrison Construction had already written it off as a loss. The criminal sentencing is Thursday, Monroe said. Prosecutor thinks he'll get 3 years minimum with the assault and fraud charges combined. Will he serve it all? At least 18 months. Maybe more if he doesn't play nice inside. I spent the night organizing documents into a locked filing cabinet, every piece of evidence, every court order, every photograph. Not because I needed them anymore, but because they were proof it had happened, that I hadn't imagined it, that I'd fought back and won. Wednesday morning brought a text from Lena. Bridge project approved by City Council. They specifically mentioned your presentation at the gala. You're leading the team. At work, people treated me differently, not with pity, but with a kind of quiet respect. The woman who'd stood on stage discussing load calculations while her abuser plotted in the audience. The engineer who'd built her case like a structure. Every support beam documented and verified. Thursday at 2 p.m. I didn't attend Roy's sentencing. Chase did texting me updates. 4 years, 2 for assault and battery, 2 for fraud, eligible for parole in 2 years with good behavior. Restitution. Ordered to pay full damages plus interest. Not that he has anything left to pay with. That evening, I sat in my living room, my safe, quiet living room with its new locks and security system and legal documents protecting my peace. The inheritance sat untouched in my account. I hadn't spent a penny of it yet. Somehow, spending it felt like letting Roy win something, even from a prison cell. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, then recognized Monroe's after-hours line. Nora, wanted you to know the DA's office is using your case for training, how you documented everything, built the evidence chain. You've created a template for other victims. After he hung up, I opened my laptop and started writing. Not a journal or evidence log, but instructions. How to document abuse, how to secure finances, how to build a legal case, how to survive when family becomes the enemy. The sun was setting through my west window, casting golden light across the papers that had saved me. Somewhere across town, Roy was being processed into state custody. Mom was with her sister, learning to live without fear. Chase was figuring out who he was without his father's shadow, and I was here, sitting on my living room floor with my back against a filing cabinet full of evidence that would never be needed again. The silence in my apartment wasn't empty anymore. It was peace, earned and protected by law. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from the bank. Withdrawal attempt blocked per your security settings. Even from jail, Roy had tried one more time. The system held. I closed my eyes and let the silence wash over me, complete and final and mine. Thank you for listening to my story. I'm curious, where are you listening from? Please comment below and let me know what country or state you're in. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more stories like this, and share your thoughts about what you would have done in my situation. Your support means everything.